So welcome to this episode of What's Arising. I'm calling this the Shadow War or the Shadow Wars, and I'll get into that in a moment. Before we start, I'd like to, as in the last podcast, invite you to get connected. Take a moment of being present and still and follow the waves of my bowl, which I'll ring 3 times, as in the last podcast, connecting with self, connecting with others, human beings, all of the collective and what's happening there, and connecting with all that is, the earth, the sky, the universe, the spirit, all that is. I'll ring them now. In the last podcast, what was arising within me was this energy of the defender and the protector, and this energy of feeling very unsafe in the world, and this defender really on overdrive, protecting us from being unsafe if we dipped into the past and the wound and opened up the wound and the emotional trauma that's there, and that we need to do that, but the defender was given the responsibility to do that, and in the responsibility that the defender took on or was given to defend us from all future unsafe events. And this defender was really only meant to be in the present. So this defender on overdrive doesn't allow us to completely surrender to what's happening in the moment now. Surrender to our wounds, let them go, let the stories go. So with this defender on overdrive and the warrior on overdrive, because there's this warrior of outgoing to keep us safe, in a sense, the defender and the warrior are working together to keep us in the drama. And so at the time of this podcast, we're very much in these worries of wars spreading. We have the Israeli-Hamas war that's arising right now, and so many other wars. We, as humans, seem to like our wars. We have these kinds of wars over space and ideology in Ukraine, or is between Israel and Palestine and land. But we have so many other wars. The war against drugs, the war against poverty, the war against disease, the war against CO2 to keep us safe, the war against, constantly war. And all of these wars that we're externalizing are pretty superficial. We have the war against the symptom. In almost all cases, we're warring against the projection outside of ourselves, and there is that's a reflection of a deeper war within each of us. These are the war against our shadow. So I call these the shadow wars. So this war, this separation of self and those parts of ourselves that we do not like, that we suppress, tend to get projected out there in the world into the collective. And all of us are, in some form, are doing that, projecting into our anger, our blaming, our shaming. There's an underlying causality or a trauma or wound in ourselves that is in relationship to that outer war. So when we look at the war from whatever side we're on, if it's the Israeli-Hamas war, this blaming, shaming energy that's going outwards there, if we really, truly examine what we can't stand about them, what gets us upset, within that is a separation of self, invariably. There's something in ourselves generally that is causing the upset, that if we went into that wound, if we let go of our defense or our warrior going out there into the world, warring against that, warring against and suppressing that part inside of ourselves, there are tremendous gifts for ourselves. If we completely surrender to the war, let it go, feel it as we do that, allow ourselves to feel it and burn off the energy and the fire within ourselves versus burning it off against somebody out there, then something magical happens, and that lead is turned into gold. This is the shadow war. This is the deeper work that humanity is inviting us to step into, to letting go of all those stories that have been built up for generations, for thousands of years in this human experience. And it is there that we will find peace, not by choosing sides. As soon as we choose a side, especially if it's coming from that emotional charge, as long as we have a charge, that charge is an indicator of a wound within us, a war with a part of ourselves, whatever side we're on, whatever we hate out there in the world is probably something we can't stand within ourselves. This week I've been reflecting on an old television series. I started watching in the 2000s, around 2004, 2005. I became aware of this television series. It was created, it started in 1994 to 1998 with 5 seasons, and the seasons, or the program was called Babylon 5. Now, Babylon 5 was kind of far-sighted in a sense, or predictive of our times right now, leading up to this times. It had lots of characteristics in this series, as many science fiction shows do, about what's going on, or many novels such as 1984 by Orwell. So in this series of Babylon 5, there has been, before the series starts, this great war among different races. And there is a peace, an exhaustion of that war. And there is a station called Babylon 5 in the kind of the middle of deep space that's meant to be a place where the different races could come together and be in relationship, negotiate, kind of like a UN kind of place where the nations would come in, and there's even a security council within this Babylon 5 to kind of prevent all wars, like the UN being established after World War II. So there's an echo of what we've been through there. But this takes place between the humans and the various races of the galaxy. There's also this corporate takeover of government, in a sense, and the media, which I would say is happening today. The influence of corporations, large international corporations, taking over the governments and directing the governments, and the takeover and the narrative from the mass media. Instead of CNN or Fox, they have ISN, the Interstellar Network, or something like this. And they have, as their hosts, beautiful people with a narrative to tell it like it is, what they want you to hear, versus what's actually going on. And so all of these characteristics are there. But from about season 2 to season 4, there is this emergence of the impending shadow wars that are coming. The shadows are arising again. The shadows are coming back. And there was this great war in the past between the shadows and the Vorlons. So you have these two great races, these great maybe archetypes in our sense of the shadows and the Vorlons. The shadows were considered bad and ugly. They looked like demons. There's these black, demonic looking energies that they had this ideology that they were helping the human race and all the younger races to develop and grow and evolve. And the way that they should do that is through competition, through chaos, through conflict. The more wars, the better. That would evolve us. That would make us strong, and strength coming from our evolution through suffering and war. That was the way to our greatness. And then on the other side, you had the Vorlons, which were also manipulative from the other side. And they were considered good, or they looked good. They, in the program, had actually manipulated the races with genetic manipulation so that they would see them as airy, beautiful, like angels. They looked like angels to all the races. They had a philosophy that the human race, and all the races, would grow and evolve through another ideology, and that was through obedience, through control, through order, not chaos, but order, and listening to them as gods. If they just took directions from the gods, then you would evolve. You'd be better. You'd be good. You'd be beautiful. You'd be light. So the Vorlons had this singular question for the races, and that is, who are you? Who are you? This is their main question. Find out who you are. Yeah, that might be familiar to me, because I had this energy within myself as a teenager. Find out who you are. Find out who you really are. It's an important question. Who are you? In spirit, not material. But the question from the shadows is, what do you want? They're materialistic. You're meant to take what's yours. Competition, totalitarianism, is good. They're like, take what you want. Be in this material realm. Happiness and success is through war and taking what you want, deciding what you want, and get it. The Vorlons, who are you? Who are you really? Two very different ideologies, and you could see from why the Vorlons might be good if you're coming up through life from a religious perspective, as I was in the Christian faith. There is this ascending kind of energy of an obedience to God, and connecting and ascending to God, and getting out of this horrible human experience of suffering and into heaven, versus, hey, there's only this life. Take what you want. Get everything you can. Soak life for everything it's worth. Doesn't matter if you hurt somebody else. It's what you want. It's also remnant of these two different energies, the Shadows and the Vorlons of the Steiner philosophy. Rudolf Steiner talked about this being a time of Ahriman, of materialism, individualism, diversity, this energy of freedom, of technology, and we will become like gods through our technology. We're in the time of Ahriman, this materialism, capitalism, getting what you want kind of energy, as opposed to the other energy which Steiner talked about is the Luciferian energy, the spirit permeated energy, the qualitative versus a quantitative energy of the materialists, of unification and the collective versus individualism, and the fantasy and love and connection versus this other energy of groundedness, this facts, this this materialist, individualistic energy. So these two energies seem to be very much aligned from the Babylon 5 and the Steiner energy. And both of these at conflict with each other. And in the Babylon 5 series, both sides, the Shadows and the Vorlons, were trying to manipulate the races to get them into their worldview. That worldview is wrong. And at some point, as the Shadows were pushed downwards and stayed silent and built up their energy, they were pushed away, but they still existed, built up their energy, and suddenly they came into the series, into the reality, and there became a great war between the shadow energy and the good and the bad, and except that the Vorlons also went into madness of we know it's right, and they decided to destroy anybody that was connected with the shadow. Any race that aligned themselves with the Shadows, we're just going to destroy them. They don't have the right to exist. So there's this rage and madness on the side of goodness. We're good. Those are people that are spreading hate. We will shut them down. So the great war, and both were contributing to the war. There was no goodness in this. None at all. So what is good and beautiful? What is the way beyond this? Between the Ahriman energy and the Luciferian energy, or the Shadows and the Vorlons? What's the middle way? Steiner proposed the middle way was Christ consciousness, the Christ energy, the balance, the in-between. Not this or that, but recognizing that our existence as human beings is the spirit in form, that the form and working in the world, in this material sense of form, is a beautiful experience. It's great to be alive with this duality in that sense, and feeling and growing and learning in all of this experience, and that in suffering we can also learn and grow and evolve, but also listening to the spirit as we're in this human experience and getting guidance also, not materialism or spiritualism, but both. The balance, the middle way, the ability, the capacity to make a wise choice in the moment, in the context of what's unfolding. What's the balance? What is the right thing to do from personal choice? And if we are in if we're in the energy of the emotion coming from the wound, in our trigger, in our with our shadow emerging, not resolving those shadows, those wounds within us, we cannot make a responsive choice. We make a reactive choice. We go to war against the other. We try to shut them down. They're hateful. And we hate them in that energy. I hate them because they're hateful. They're spreading hate. Yet I'm in the same polarity. I'm in the same duality. The Christ energy is about non-duality, letting go of all of those wounds, letting go of all of those stories, forgiving, surrendering all those, doing the inner work to let go of the story of good, bad, right, wrong, and just be present with what is and making wise choices from that place. Who am I going to be in this? And if something arises that's warring energy against something, resisting, defending, or going to war, then recognizing that and doing the inner work and letting it go. That's shadow work, that's shadow integration, so that I can be in the center. There's nothing wrong with those things that arise. That's part of the human experience. That's part of our evolution to move to a place of peace within ourselves and contentment and letting go of the drama. We love the drama. We love the drama of life as human beings. We think it creates this aliveness in us, and in some ways it does. This emotional wave is there's an aliveness in this suffering, and we can say, I'm alive in this pain. but it's not needed. None of that's needed. We can still that wave, and we can do that for others by doing the work within ourselves, stopping the war within ourselves, because we are one organism, all of humanity, in connection with all that is. Each time we withdraw from the war, each time we withdraw from the belief that things are unsafe and drop our defenses, move into forgiveness and surrender, we quiet the wave. We still the wave within ourselves. And our world, our individual world changes, and our relationship with others will change. Guaranteed. We're not triggered. We can sit and we can listen. We can hear our inner voice. We can find out who we are at our core. We can get clarity on who am I, like the Vorlons, who are you? And we can get clarity on what do you want? What do you really want? What do you really need in this life to feel safe, to feel whole? Both questions are answered from the middle. I hope that made sense to you or works within you, gives you some insight. And if you need any assistance in surrender, in forgiveness, in finding that Christ energy in the middle, working through those stories of despair, anger, rage, sadness, whatever charge is up for you in whatever relationship to life or person you have, reach out. I'll put some links in the show notes. Book a discovery session with me, and I'd be just honored to be able to work with you to help still your wave.